Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's Way T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And boy, oh boy, we are excited today because we've got David Tomen returning back to the podcast. We're going to be talking about biohacking, neurohacking, avoiding age-related memory loss, brain fog, and fatigue. And we're going to dive deep. We're talking before this about treating PTSD with nootropic supplements. This is a big idea. We'll probably dive into a bunch of different areas, maybe get into anxiety, ADD, and depression. For those who don't know David, his journey began with nootropic supplements when he was diagnosed with adult ADD. And after years of buying self-help books, even suffering from depression over his inability to focus, Ritalin helped turn his life and career around. But a few short years later, David found himself in the ER with a laundry list of symptoms. Neurologists tested him for early onset Alzheimer's, which came back negative, thankfully. But not only was Dave struggling with focus again, but he was suffering from complete memory loss, chronic fatigue, depression, and his business and marriage were in deep trouble. David again turned to nootropics. He's written a book on it. He was on the podcast before, episode 58. He founded nootropicsexpert.com. You want to head over there and get all the good stuff over there. And he wrote 2 books, Secrets of the Optimized Brain and Head First, the complete guide to healing and optimizing your brain with nootropic supplements. We will put the links in the show notes for this. David, welcome back to the show.
Howdy. Thank you for having me back.
All right, so let's just go right at it. We were just touched on this, and I had to stop you before we got the podcast going because I was like, this is so good, we got to go into it. Let's talk about, you were suggesting in our previous conversations that you think almost everybody is suffering from some form of PTSD. Can you explain what that is for people and why you think that people are suffering? What's the cause? What happens? How does this work? And more importantly, how does it impact their brain? And then again, how do you overcome this if you do have this situation?
I think that more people are suffering from PTSD than realize because of this pandemic that's going on.
Okay, so what you're saying is like the lockdowns or the competing points of information are causing is it the loss of work? Is it the loss of trust? Is it information source? What is it that's causing that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Because all PTSD is a stress-related disorder.
Right.
Yeah. It was first put into there's a thing called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders, the 3rd edition for the American Psychiatric Association in 1980. And they describe what the full syndrome of post-traumatic stress disorder, how it was defined. And they define it as a traumatic event that was conceptualized as a catastrophic stressor that was outside the range of human experience.
Oh, that makes total sense. This is,
yeah. So what they had in mind were things like war, torture, rape, the Holocaust, atomic bombings, natural and man-made disasters. But they didn't talk about hurricanes, or they didn't talk about COVID-19, but those would fall under the same kind of stressors. Yeah. Okay.
So if I heard you correctly, what we're suggesting is and I'm a student of neuro-linguistic programming and things like that. And I know that one of the things that inside of that is the imprint in memory and behavior modification often requires some sort of deep emotional charge. And that can be a deeply positive charge or a deeply negative charge. And, Tony Robbins is famous for taking people through those to rewrite rewiring in the brain. But what you're suggesting here is this whole response to the COVID and the situation is an unprecedented global event, which is going to have and is having definitive traumatic effects on the human brain moving forward. And maybe if you could kind of break that down, what is the impact at maybe the different ages of society? Because if you're a child and this is a formative point, would that be different than someone who is, say, in the middle of their career that got wiped out, or someone who might be a senior who now can't see their family anymore?
Sure. There are symptoms for symptoms to be considered PTSD, you've got to have experienced some of these symptoms within the last month to actually be diagnosed. So, and for adults, it's divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. Re-experiencing symptoms like flashbacks, reliving the memory over and over, nightmares, frightening thoughts. Then there's avoidance symptoms, like avoiding places, events, or objects that are reminders of the experience, avoiding thoughts or feelings related to the traumatic event, or feeling detached or unable to connect with loved ones. And then there's arousal or reactivity symptoms, hypersensitivity or easily startled. I was dealing with that. Hypervigilance, feeling tense or on edge, difficulty sleeping, insomnia, irritability or angry outbursts. I mean, we see that stuff in the news these days.
We see it all the time. I see it.
Yeah.
I see it when I go to the grocery store.
Yeah, there you go. And cognition and mood symptoms include brain fog, trouble concentrating, loss of memory, depression, hopelessness, trouble remembering key features of the traumatic event, feelings of guilt or blame. Like when it comes to COVID-19, if a person got it, for instance, they could feel guilty because they passed it on to a family member who died. A loss of interest in enjoyable activities and headaches. Now, children with PTSD, their symptoms are wetting the bed after learning how to use the toilet, forgetting how or unable to talk, acting out the scary event during playtime, and being unusually clingy with a parent or another adult.
Wow, that's interesting. That's I think there's a lot of that going on right now from my observations. You're right.
Yeah,
now, what about someone in the middle age kind of category? What would be
every adult? It would be I mean, you wouldn't experience all of the symptoms that the laundry list that I rhymed off here, but you would experience some of them, because I was diagnosed with, the day that the psychiatrist diagnosed me adult ADD, he diagnosed me PTSD as well. And I recognized some of these symptoms, like avoiding certain thoughts or feelings, feeling detached or unable to connect, hypersensitivity, easily startled. He picked up on this. I didn't. And it wasn't until 10 or 12 years later that I was researching this article. And when I wrote it, because of hurricane survivors, I realized where I think that my PTSD came from, and that was from a Category 5 hurricane when I was living in Antigua. So
if we're breaking that down, you're saying that you believe that a lot of the ADD things that happen are initiated through some sort of traumatic event.
It can be.
Okay.
It can be. Now, what is PTSD?
Yes.
PTSD is a stress disorder. And the neuroscientists at the University of California, Berkeley found that chronic stress triggers long-term changes in brain structure and function. Chronic stress changes neural networks. Cortisol creates a domino effect that hardwires pathways between the hippocampus and the amygdala. Now remember, the amygdala is your lizard brain, right?
Correct.
It's the area responsible for your fight or flight response. This hardwiring is caused by stress. That's caused by stress is not the way your brain was designed, but chronic ongoing stress tricks your brain into building circuits and hunkering down for the long haul. Yeah.
Oof.
And this rewiring appears to be permanent.
Wow.
It regrows the long-term potentiation that's used to form long-term memory. The same thing is happening, connecting your amygdala to your hippocampus.
So to give me a consideration of that is, I can remember my grandparents on both sides who had experienced the depression and rations on that. They all like had just massive amounts of canned food in their house that had expired like sometimes a decade before, that was just all there in case of something happened, because they had that. Would that be a kind of a reactive kind of performance? And I think there's a lot of people that can relate with their grandparents that had that, right? That was a pretty traumatic event.
Yes. I mean, there are so many people suffering from PTSD and they have no idea that it actually is that.
Wow.
And all of the things all the psychiatric symptoms that hang off of it. Now, what actually physically happens in your brain, other than that hardwiring of your amygdala to your hippocampus, chronic stress coats neurons in myelin, which is not supposed to happen, right? Myelin it coats your axons. So it protects your axons like electrical tape around an electrical wire. So the action potential can go up an axon unimpeded, and it just boosts the signal. It coats the whole neuron instead. And it reduces the number of neurons in gray matter, and it reduces the number of neurons in gray matter, and they decrease while white matter increases. Now, gray matter in your brain is primarily neurons, and white matter in your brain, when you see on images of the human brain, that white matter is actually axons. Axons and synapses connecting the neurons. That's how your brain is wired.
Right.
And so now, under conditions of chronic stress and excess cortisol, your brain's neurons are coated or sheathed in this myelin, which is, like I was mentioning, is not the way it's supposed to happen. And that's what we're dealing with.
What's the consequences of that, I guess? So I guess that's the question that comes up. What happens when you're myelinating the entire neuron as opposed to just the axon?
Probably neuron death.
Really? So you're literally losing that brain cell?
Well, they're talking about reductions in gray matter. Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, because I want to take this into an experiential reality. So I go out into the world, and you can have a discussion about someone. Let's say, let's use something that's common. Right now, there's an incredible division politically. And what I find interesting is, depending on who I'm talking to, and if I bring up countering points to whatever that narrative is for the other person. So if, for example, if you're on the left side and you bring up right points, if you're on the right side and you bring up left times, I oftentimes see people have what I know as a physiologist as a nervous system shutdown. They just go, like they lose all capacity to have a conversation or a rational communication. And I look at that and I go, well, as a physiologist, I'm actually seeing an overload to a nervous system the very same way that I would see an athlete that has trained their nervous system to fatigue, either through physical exercise or for running or in a combat sport or whatever. I'm actually seeing that with a person with just a mere suggestion of something that's counter to their beliefs. Would that be an indication? Or
think about it. Have you ever tried to change a person's like that's mind?
It's virtually impossible. It's virtually impossible.
So we go back to hardwiring sections of your brain. And when you hardwire sections of your brain, what you're doing is you're growing new neural pathways. That's how you form memories. And so and these are permanent unless you step in and do something to intervene and reverse this process.
Wow.
Right? So a very similar thing is happening in that case.
Wow, that's huge. What you're suggesting here is not just America. We're talking the entire world could be experiencing a radical departure from normal neurological functioning because of this event. Yeah.
And I've been getting emails and questions on the YouTube channel and questions in the comments section on Nootropics Expert from long haulers.
What's a long hauler?
That's what I thought. I thought it was truck drivers, right? It turns out a long hauler is somebody who's had COVID and survived and is now suffering the side effects like months later.
Right. Some of the respiratory issues and things like that that's happening.
And neurological problems.
Right. So do you think it's actually the physiological components of the virus, or do you think it's actually an associated trauma with having it and
Probably
the potential?
both.
So it's a combination of two.
Yeah, it's a combination of both, because one, the little bit, I haven't started research. I finally committed to a guy in the comment section this morning that I was going to start researching this, because there's been enough research now into COVID-19 post after a person has it we know a little bit about what's going on. We know that there's a huge amount of inflammation that goes on throughout the body, and logically it happens in the brain too. And when you get inflammation in the brain, it kills neurons. Yeah. And when you kill neurons, you disrupt neural circuits. And so you can't think as quickly. I mean, depression sets in, you're dealing with anxiety. And they think that inflammation is happening via mitochondrial dysfunction. So this is just little bits that I've read here and there. I've got to take a deep dive into the research now and write something on this. But yeah, the entire world, man.
Whew, that's a heavy thing to lay down for people. So the people that you're in contact that may be suffering from PTSD and have the capacity to recognize that something's going on, and what things how do you identify it? Number two, or where do you go to identify it? And number three, how do you address that potential issue?
That's a great question. Those are great questions. Well, you identify it either through self-diagnosis by coming to a place like Nootropics Expert and reading this article and reading through the list of symptoms that's described in the Psychiatric Association's manual. And so
we'll put a link to that, by the way, folks.
Or go to your psychiatrist, and your psychiatrist declares that you're PTSD.
Wow.
I think over the years, I've had a number of people come to me that came back from the war, for example, that were diagnosed PTSD, but other people as well that came from abusive relationships, for example, that weren't necessarily professionally diagnosed with it, but did enough reading, including on my website, to recognize that, yeah, what I'm dealing with PTSD, now what do I do?
Right.
Yeah. So
wow. This is so poignant and important that people do this right now, or get this information to their family members.
It is. And, there's only so much you can do with family members, though, if they're willing to help themselves.
Yes.
First you got to help yourself.
Yes.
And if you're dealing with PTSD, these are the kinds of things that you can use. And what I'm going to do right now is just give you a list of supplements that we know works. Some of them have been tested specifically for PTSD, and other ones have been clinically tested for the things that happen in PTSD, but not specifically for PTSD. Yeah.
Now, just as a quick sidebar before we get into those, now these nutritional supplements, do they prevent the myelination, or do they just assist in neural connection? Like, what are we trying to do here in this situation?
We're trying to do a number of things. We're trying to tamp down the inflammation, and we're trying to rebuild the neural network so that they're more normal, and so that we can start thinking more clearly again.
Right.
That's primarily the big ones there. Ashwagandha, for example, is one great example. Ashwagandha, it's an Ayurvedic herb that's been used for thousands of years, and we know it's been proven to reduce anxiety and depression, because for a number of things. It reduces the stress hormone cortisol, which is important. it tamps down the hormone cortisol. It lowers blood sugar levels, and it improves lipid profiles. But in your brain, it helps regenerate axons and dendrites, and it helps reconstruct synapses.
Beautiful.
The same junctions where neurons communicate with other neurons, so that you're boosting your memory and you're rewiring neural networks that were affected by severe stress like PTSD.
Beautiful.
Right? Bacopa monnieri is another one. This is a perennial herb that comes from Southeast Asia. It's often referred to as Brahmi. It was named after the supreme god Brahma, and it's been used for thousands of years as well. It's got two active components, bacosides A and B, and they improve the signaling of electrical impulses between neurons in your brain. And it also helps rebuild damaged neurons, the same neurons that are damaged by chronic stress, like in PTSD. And I've got clinical studies to back that up. Bacopa also reduces stress and anxiety. Research at Banaras Hindu University in India showed that Bacopa was as effective for anxiety as the benzo drug lorazepam.
Wow, that's huge. And of course, one of my favorite YouTube celebrities, Dr. Jordan Peterson, who is the psychologist out of Toronto, had recently almost died from, he was prescribed benzos and suffered physiological withdrawal symptoms from it when he tried to come off it. And people don't understand, it's a very highly prescribed drug out there, and the consequences of trying to get off this are horrific.
Oh, they are. They're brutal.
Yeah, I don't even know how they can legitimately prescribe this particular drug, because the side effects, I think, and trying to get off it are just absolutely unbelievable. And someone as intelligent as him, had a horrible time of it. So obviously, if you can use some nootropic supplements, even in a preventative way, it would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Keep going. Sorry to interject.
We could dive down that rabbit hole and talk for another few hours, but
yeah, exactly. Let's keep going.
Let's not go there. We just know that there are supplements that are readily available at Whole Foods or at your local vitamin shop that you can buy that work as well as benzos.
Wow.
You just don't want to take them when you're taking benzos.
Correct.
NADH. NADH is a coactive enzyme of vitamin B3 or niacin. And it's found in and it's critical for the health of every single cell in your body and your brain. It's a primary carrier of electrons from glucose in acetate for ATP synthesis. ATP is a fuel source that's made in your mitochondria that powers your brain cells, and it powers the rest of your body too. So you need NADH to help convert the energy from the food you eat into the type of energy that your body can use. Research has shown that supplementing with NADH regenerates stem cells in your brain.
Wow.
It decreases anxiety and it reduces the symptoms of chronic fatigue.
It was, I know it's one of the, when you go to a neurofeedback training at 40 Years of Zen, the neuropsychologist or the neuroscientist that runs the program suggests using NADH extensively along with fasting for BDNF to improve the results of the training.
Yep. Yeah, there's lots of clinics right across the United States and in other countries where NADH is used as a therapy for treating addiction, anxiety, depression, chronic stress, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, I've used it. I think it's great, and I think it's a phenomenal product to be used.
So another one is lithium oratate. Lithium is it's a soft, silvery white alkali metal and trace element that's considered essential for human health. And the therapeutic value of lithium goes back to the ancient Greek and Roman times when people were soaking in alkali springs.
Yep.
For the physical and
the Lithium Springs, right? Lithium Springs,
yeah.
Right? There's a great place in Oregon I go to when I drive down from British Columbia. There's in Ashland where you go to these springs, you sit in that hot water with the lithium in it, and you just feel amazing.
My wife wants to move to Ashland.
It's a great little
She
town.
loves it there.
Yeah.
So today, lithium it's got an undeserved reputation because it's used in like mega doses to treat bipolar disorder and mania. But the clinical research for the neuroprotective benefits of lithium are so overwhelming that scientists are starting to ask, why isn't everybody using it? Yeah. And so here we're talking about microdosing lithium with lithium orotate for treating symptoms of PTSD. And we use it because it's been shown to prevent apoptosis. It reduces glutamate toxicity that are mediated by NMDA receptors. It promotes BDNF, or brain-derived nootropic factor, for improving synaptic plasticity for learning and memory, and it stimulates neuronal stem cells.
Beautiful.
Supplementing with lithium orotate has been shown to improve mood and prevent depression and even suicide.
Wow.
And lithium helps to put a stop to outbursts of rage and reduces anxiety. So for people that are dealing with PTSD in the aftermath of something like COVID-19 or a hurricane or whatever, using lithium could mean feeling excited about life again for the first time in a long time, you know?
Wow. That's
anxiety and social
huge.
anxiety no longer have to be a problem. Life is simply more fun and enjoyable. We're talking about 5 milligrams of lithium. Wow. It's so small that have you ever seen a 5 milligram pill?
Well, yeah. I
Like
think they used to call it like microdots. So.
Yeah, it's just a little bigger than a microdot.
Yeah.
But they put it in uratic acid, so that it's like 135 milligram capsules.
Yes.
That's what the rest of it is, just uratic acid, which helps across the blood-brain barrier. But yeah, microdosing lithium is fantastic. My wife keeps some in her purse so that when we're out in the car and I'm driving and I lose it in traffic, she doesn't say anything anymore. She just hands me a couple of lithium orotate tablets and a bottle of water. And within 5 minutes, I've settled down.
For everyone who grew up in around the 80s, they used to say, "Hey man, take a tab." That was the way to chill out. They used to just say, "Take a tab." So,
oh man, lithium or L-theanine. L-theanine is a non-dietary amino acid that you get from green tea. Is very similar in structure to the neurotransmitters glutamate and glutamine. L-theanine is quite an incredible supplement because it does a whole bunch of different things. It boosts alpha brain waves, which promotes an alert relaxation, and theta brain waves, which are associated with creativity and relief from trauma. It increases GABA, serotonin, and dopamine levels in your brain, as well as increasing brain-derived nootropic factor and nerve growth factor, which provides a calming effect and improves cognition and memory. And L-theanine is an antagonist of NMDA receptors, which inhibits the synaptic release of glutamate, which protects your brain from the stimulation caused by glutamate and possible glutamate toxicity.
This is a really cool thing because I made an observation a number of years ago. For most people don't know, but I have a little small confession to make, is that I'm a major tea drinker and have been my whole life. I love tea. I love coffee too, but I always say what's interesting, I would go to a really great tea shop, and I drink tea every day. I go to this tea shop in Vancouver called O5 Tea. And they have this vast array of teas, like, you know, ones that enhance GABA, one that enhance serotonin. Like, it's just a cornucopia of tea. It's the ultimate tea experience. And I would sit there with friends and bring friends, and it would be nothing for us to sit for 3, 4, 5 hours over tea, different kinds of tea, and drinking tea and having this really nice connection. And I said, that's the difference between coffee and tea. Yeah. You have a business relationship of coffee, you get the stimulation, you get out, you get the contract signed, you do the deal, you get out the door, you're done in 30 minutes. When you have tea, you're going to have an event and it's like this whole experience. And so I've been an advocate of tea drinking and for those reasons. And there is neurochemical reasons with that supports that information, which is beautiful.
Yeah. I love green tea. My favorite is these days it changes from time to time. Right now, my favorite is Tazo chai.
Okay.
That I can get from the local supermarket here. You can get organic Tazo chai. Tastes fantastic.
Tazo chai is very, very lovely, and I like it. I'm a big fan of pu'er teas. I'm more of a show. For our pu'er listeners, I'm a show pu'er guy, and sometimes I'll go into the shangs, but you get really deep into the neural cognitive effects of the different teas. They're quite marked and significant when you get into like these kind of rare elite teas. And so I know Tim Ferriss is in that program too. He gets it too. So yeah, we're gonzo on the pu'er tea. It's a whole other world.
There you go.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip, rapid cheat meal relief. Research shows that cheat meals can actually be an effective way to boost your metabolism. One key weight loss hormone, leptin, can be increased by up to 30% following a cheat meal. The challenge with the cheat meals is that all those extra calories and lower food quality can be hard to digest, which means you could be totally sidelined with a food coma after big cheat meals. The solution is to take strong digestive enzymes like masszymes, which will help rapidly digest and break down the extra food. 3 to 5 capsules before or right after your cheat meal can make a huge difference in how you feel following the cheat meal. If it's a cheat day with multiple large meals, you might want to go up to 10 capsules or higher to help you power through all that food. To save 10% on masszymes, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and enter the code CHEAT10 at checkout.
There is one, it's not considered a supplement, and the FDA has tried to ban it. So I'm not going to talk much about it here because it's Phenibut. It's an analog of GABA. It was developed in St. Petersburg in 1963, and it's used in Russia as a pharmaceutical to treat PTSD. The FDA is trying to ban it here in the States, and it's very, very difficult to get. And it's something that is extremely hard to use. And if you're an addict or you deal with addiction, you want to stay away from it. But it is an option.
You mean, so is that gamma hydroxybutyric acid, GHB?
You know what? I don't remember what the chemical...
Yeah, that combination was used extensively in the bodybuilding world back in the 80s, and that's when it started getting it banned because
yes,
it also
is.
Yeah, it also used to cause these pretty impressive spikes in growth hormone.
Yes, it does.
And so bodybuilders were using it. And of course, the founder of VAS, Bill Phillips, had talked about it. And of course, then people were getting, of course, bodybuilders, if a little bit's good's a lot, and they were getting smashed and having all these problems. And then it became a party drug. And then it got outlined as a banned substance in a lot of places. And and there was all sorts of horrific derivatives. Yeah, so I'm way down those rabbit holes. So, so I love chatting about this stuff. A lot of people don't know about these things, so it's great to have you on here.
I only know one place in the United States right now that sells it, and I'm not going to divulge it in this podcast.
Of course, yes.
Rhodiola rosea is an ancient remedy that has got remarkable stress relieving and anxiety, anti-anxiety properties. And it stands shoulder to shoulder with some of the most potent drugs to treat depression and anxiety. It helps with neurogenesis by repairing and growing new neurons. And it activates the synthesis and resynthesis of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, your brain and body, your cell's main energy source. It helps reduce inflammatory C-reactive protein, which some professionals are considering using as a diagnostic tool for PTSD. In other words, if you have elevated C-reactive protein and you've got PTSD symptoms, that could be one of the indicators.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's really easy to, that's just a standard blood test. I mean, your
Wow.
doctor, one of the last times you got labs done, it included C-reactive protein and the
Yep.
pro-inflammatory cytokines.
Yeah.
So solidarcide, which it comes from, is one of the compounds found in rhodiola rosea. It protects neurons from oxidative stress-induced cell death. And there's reports from the nootropics community and data from clinical trials too that shows that rhodiola rosea encourages a balanced mood. Rhodiola has been shown to improve mental performance under stress. Clinical studies show that it increases the number of neurons in the hippocampus to normal levels, the same neurons that are lost as a result of PTSD. There was one study published in Phytomedicine that evaluated the effectiveness of using rhodiola compared to rhodiola rosea. Now, there's different rhodiolas. Rhodiola rosea compared to the antidepressant sertraline, or it's also called Zoloft, the brand name.
Yep.
The research team concluded that even though rhodiola was slightly less antidepressant benefits, it possessed a more favorable risk to benefit ratio for those with mild to moderate depression.
Wow.
Now, rhodiola is one of these supplements that you have to be careful about the supplement that you buy, because there's a real problem with adulteration in the dietary supplement market, especially with something like rhodiola as it's grown in popularity. The best rhodiola comes from places like Siberia.
Okay.
And when manufacturers can't get their hands on the original stuff, they start using other forms of rhodiola and putting it in the capsule. And you don't get the same benefits from that. So be careful who you buy your rhodiola from, and make sure that they've got certificates of analysis proving that what's on the label is in the capsule.
That's great.
SAMe. SAMe is a naturally occurring amino acid methionine. And it's bound to an ATP molecule, and it's found in nearly every single cell in your body, and it helps produce and breaks down the neurotransmitters acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and melatonin in your brain. Studies show that SAMe is very effective in treating depression without the side effects of prescription antidepressants. And while some pharmaceuticals can take from 6 to 8 weeks to just even start working, SAMe can work almost right away. Scientists at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services conducted an analysis of 102 individual studies and 25 databases on SAMe and depression in 2002. And in the report, the researchers concluded that treatment with SAMe was equivalent to standard therapy for depression, which is pretty amazing. Now, you've got to, SAMe is very unstable, so you have to get it in enteric-coated tablets or capsules. Take it on an empty stomach, either an hour before or 2 hours after meals. And one big word of caution, if you're going to try SAMe, you need to use vitamins B6 and B12 and folate for it to work properly, or SAMe will elevate your homocysteine levels.
Got it.
And high homocysteine can cause heart attacks.
B6 and B12 tend to accentuate the transport of a lot of different things, it seems,
They do.
as well. Yeah.
And they're cofactors in the synthesis of all the major neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
The last one on my list for PTSD is St. John's wort. And it's a potent antidepressant, and it's been used to treat a variety of internal and external illnesses dating back to the ancient Greeks. St. John's wort inhibits the uptake of serotonin, dopamine, GABA, glutamate, and norepinephrine. When you inhibit the neuronal uptake of these neurotransmitters, it has a profound effect on depression and mood in most people. St. John's wort extract decreases oxidative stress, it prevents neurotoxicity and brain inflammation, and it helps maintain mitochondrial electric potential in brain cells. St. John wort moderates the genes that control the function of your HPA axis, which is directly related to symptoms of anxiety and stress.
Wow. This is interesting work. My question, I guess, would be,
Mhm.
have we got a few more, or are we?
No, that's it. That's the end of my list for.
So my next question is, okay, so we've identified some things that can be helpful in kind of maintaining good cognitive capacity and assisting in preventing, or certainly maybe even changing the myelination of the neuron as opposed to the myelination of the axon. How does someone go about addressing these things? Why should they do that? And where can they get all this stuff?
Well,
because randomly shotgunning all these things is one thing, but actually getting a systematized way to go about it. What do you do? How do you do this?
I've got a little stack at the end of this article that says
great.
You can start with a combination of, and you can get all of these, most of these. Lithium Oratate might not be available at your local vitamin shop. You'll have to check. But just put together a small stack of either ashwagandha or Bacopa monnieri, one or the other. Don't have to use both. Lithium Oratate, NADH, SAMe with a high quality B complex, and rhodiola rosea. Now, if somebody was going to put together this stack and start it, and you've never tried any one of these supplements before, I wouldn't buy all of these supplements and start taking them right away. I would buy all of these supplements, but I would try ashwagandha first for a couple of days.
Right.
And if nothing bad happens, then add lithium oratate. And then if nothing bad happens, add NADH. And then if nothing bad happens, if you take everything all at once and something bad happens, you don't know where the culprit is.
Correct. So you do a similar process that I do when I test new products. I test them singularly. In themselves, and then it's like, okay, I try that, and then you start working in combination, I guess. So just to go through that again, so let's say that you try one of the products like Bacopa or whatever, so you try that. How long would you take that product or ashwagandha to determine, okay, that seems to be working for me, or it's not working for me, and determine, and can you illustrate what bad means? Something bad happens.
I can illustrate what bad means with ashwagandha because I can't use it.
Okay.
Because ashwagandha influences the thyroid hormones, and I'm severely hypothyroid. And so when I take ashwagandha, I start getting my hypo symptoms back.
Okay.
And I feel like crap.
Okay.
So I know that I can't use ashwagandha, but I can use Bacopa monnieri. And so for the person that's watching this, if you're going to try to figure out which one should you try first, if you've got a thyroid problem, forget about ashwagandha. But if your thyroid hormones are okay, try ashwagandha and see if it works. If you have a negative reaction to it, then try Bacopa monnieri. They do similar things and they provide similar benefits, so you can use one or the other. You just have to find out which one feels better for you. Now, one thing is that one of these supplements is not going to solve PTSD. Yeah. I mean, this is going to take a combination. It's going to take a stack of supplements, and it's probably going to take months for your brain to start rebuilding itself so that you're not experiencing those symptoms. I do no longer experience the symptoms of PTSD. I don't know when I stopped experiencing that, but it was sometimes in the last 7 years, and I just wasn't paying attention because of my nootropic stack contains a lot of these supplements that eventually the symptoms just went away.
Now, do you take these supplements singularly in the day with food or multiple times throughout the day?
Bacopa monnieri is in a stack called MindLab Pro that I use first thing in the morning. Well, it's 2 capsules, so I use a capsule in the morning, a capsule at noon. Mm-hmm. Lithium Oratate, I dose 3 or 4 times a day. Mm-hmm. But lithium oratate is the kind of thing you can dose as needed as well. You don't have to do it 3 or 4 times a day. Mm-hmm. NADH is the kind of thing that you can dose it a couple of times a day. Same thing with SAMe. Like if you're going to use 200 milligrams, try to find a 100 milligram capsule or tablet and dose it twice, once in the morning and once in the afternoon.
About the NAD, what about injections of NAD, which is becoming quite common?
If you can afford it and you can go to a clinic to get it done, absolutely. Because otherwise you have to rely on your digestive system to make sure that enough of it is delivered to your brain. If you get it directly injected into your system, it can bypass your digestive system and goes directly to your brain, and it's going to work faster.
Yeah, a lot of clinics that you can go to, they'll put these cocktails together intravenously or through kind of a fast injection, and I've done both, and both are profoundly remarkable in their impact and effects. It's quite sudden.
Yeah,
and NADH though, you got to really monitor, because you kind of go up and there's almost like an uncomfortable feeling for a little while, and then you kind of sit with it, and then it kind of your body acclimatizes, you kind of take it up again. That's where you need a really good ND or whatever to kind of monitor what's going on, because you can certainly hurt yourself if you take too much of that. That can be very dangerous.
That and SAMe, I get reports all the time from people that have tried SAMe and it backfired on them. So, one of the things that was not in that stack was L-Theanine.
Yes.
Just drink 3 or 4 cups of green tea during the day.
And if you want to go out there, go grab some Pu'er tea from 05. They ship around the world. I tell you, you can get some great stuff. They also have a really nice GABA blend. It's a GABA tea that just it's divine. I haven't seen anything quite like it. So
do it. So it's possible to get rid of your PTSD symptoms. I know, because I did. I'm a testament to that. You just have to work at it, and it takes a while for that to happen, and you have to be willing to experiment. You have to have an open mind to this thing, and you have to have a willingness to follow instructions. Follow the recommended dosages. Just taking these things willy-nilly, just indiscriminately, every second or third day, or just try one here and try one there, is not going to do the job.
Correct. That's very important for people. And one of the things that Matt, my business partner, is extraordinarily good at, he actually creates spreadsheets, and we recommend doing that. You can kind of just get your feedback on what's happening in testing each of these products, because we're deep in the nootropic conversation. I, for myself, use a journal. And I like to journal and see what's going on inside my body. I'm pretty tuned into data and my own biofeedback, because I've been doing it for so long. So I can kind of feel, that didn't work for me, or that was awesome.
Yeah, I'm horrible at journaling. Well, I guess because I just write all day long anyway. The last thing I want to do is keep a journal. But I've got my stacks that I've been using for years, and it's the exact same stack in the morning, at noon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, before I go to bed. It doesn't change. Unless I come across something that is new or that I haven't tried before, and I researched and found good reports, and then I try it. That's the only time I'll ever add something to my stack. But you just get used to using. You find something that works, and then you just keep on. People ask, how long can I use this? Until for the rest of your life.
And I think that's a very interesting point. And I think people need to understand of where we are in the modern world as far as the accessibility of high quality nutrition. It's virtually impossible, regardless of whatever dietary practice that you're on or does best for you, that you will be able to optimize your brain without nutritional supplementation. It's not going to happen. And I think and we're now seeing, because of the unintended consequences of technology, there's an increased cognitive load relative to the proliferation of information. So how do I sort, ignore, and focus on the things that I need to focus on? And a lot of that is related to how well the neurochemistry is working in your brain in order for you to do this. And that is why the nootropic industry is starting to explode. Virtually every high performer I know, people who are out there that you're seeing online and that have millions of followers and all that, they're all using nootropics to cope with technological innovation. Would you say that this field is going to explode over the next 24 to 36 months?
Well, it is. It is. When I started I started Nootropics Expert 5 years ago. I founded it. I'm coming across stuff that I wrote in 2016 or late 2015. That's how long I've been doing this. Back then, nobody else was doing it.
Yeah.
There was no books on it. There weren't any websites on it. I had to figure all this stuff out on my own. I've seen it start to gain traction year by year by year until the last year. The last year, people like Gaia Herbs have got a nootropic supplement stack.
Correct. And so this brings up another thing, and this has been a pet peeve of mine.
And they call it that too.
This has been a pet peeve of mine for so many years in the supplement industry, and I call it the Me Too problem. So there was a Me Too movement before the Me Too movement has been proliferated in the supplement industry. Is that a new product or a new study comes out that demonstrates the efficacy of an herb, maybe one or two people take it or manufacture it, and it's really good. And then the next thing you know, there's this wave of Me Too, low quality, ineffective dosage levels, poorly manufactured products that proliferate the market. And then people go, well, geez, Dave, I took this. Work. I took the Bacopa and I got nothing. And then you go, well, what was it? And you look at the actual container and it's got 50 different elements that don't make any sense at all or are really toxic for you. It's got a poor encapsulation. It's got not a significant dosage or whatever. How do you sort through product quality?
I've written articles on exactly that, and I just published a YouTube video on that.
Beautiful.
I think the very last video that I uploaded to my YouTube channel was 7 tips for selecting the highest quality dietary supplement or something like that.
We're going to put some links to that in this interview.
And I just walk people through these 7 steps that you can follow and so at the very end of the video, this is your checklist. These are the 7 things you need to do before you buy something. Do this and this and this and this and this and this before you buy it.
Love it.
And once you find that thing that has been addressed by all 7 of those categories, you know it's the real thing. You know that what's on the label is actually in the capsule, and you know that the dosage is similar to what's on something like Nootropics Expert or in one of my books, or you can take enough of it to get the proper recommended dose. Once you find that supplement, always buy that supplement.
Right.
And assume that it's not going to be the cheapest one out there. Assume that it's going to be one of the more expensive ones on the market.
Yes. Because
it costs a lot of money to get the stuff from the wild or off of farms from the other side of the world into your house.
Not to mention the quality control around the extraction process of a lot of these elements is a big factor.
It's huge.
In the development of it. And then when it comes to sourcing, did they get the GMP stamp? Did they get the certificate of analysis with that company? Another thing to be mindful of is when your favorite brand gets bought out by a large company, oftentimes you'll see the product quality just get cut to ribbons.
Yep.
And I've seen that decade after decade. So you need to be also mindful of that when you do find a product and suddenly it doesn't work. 9 times out of 10, that company's been bought and they've changed the sources of where they're getting their product.
One of those 7 steps on that checklist is investigating the company.
Yes.
Find out who they are. Find out who owns them. Find out how long they've been around. Take a look at their website. Look, they've got an about page. If they haven't got an about page, just write them off immediately.
Yep.
And then find out how they test their product.
Beautiful.
And what I've found there is, not everybody is doing this. Only a handful of companies are doing this now, but there are a handful of major dietary supplement companies that got a QR code on their label that you can scan with your phone so that you can download the certificate of analysis for that batch of supplements.
Yep.
Which is ideal. So that's PTSD, man.
Wow, that's impressive. And whew, That's a lot of information. So let's just to summarize this component, just so people are walking away with some action steps. There's a high likelihood that if you've gone through COVID, like many of us have, you may be suffering from PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
What's say the action steps that they need to do in order to address that?
Well, the first thing is just verify that what you've got is really PTSD. And if you haven't got a diagnosis from a doctor, go to this article and look at the symptoms of PTSD. And I've got them. They're bullet points, step by step. It's in plain English. And just see if any of these apply to you. If you've got frightening thoughts, or if you've got nightmares or flashbacks, or you're avoiding people or places. Anyway, just verify that you've got PTSD. And if you're satisfied that, yes, it's PTSD that you're dealing with, don't panic and put your head between your legs and shy away. Keep on reading. Down the rest of this, and know that we know what it is, and we know what happens in your brain and your body with PTSD, and you can fix it.
So step one, go read this article. That we're going to put the links to it right here and at nootropicexperts.com. Number two, if you think you have that, maybe go get a diagnosis from a medical professional that you can trust or find that can give that. Step three would be
take a look at the list of supplements here. And the list of supplements, all but one, are easily available at any local vitamin shop or Whole Foods or your local health food store.
Okay.
And spend the money on 6 different supplements and take them home and start testing them one by one. And give it a couple of days, give the first one a couple of days, and go to this article. And I've got a link through to the full review, which is each one of my reviews for each one of these supplements is typically 12 to 15 pages long.
Can you put that article? Can you tell us what that article is that they're looking for?
Actually, I should be writing a separate one, because this is it's called treating post-hurricane PTSD with nootropic supplements.
Okay, so we need to maybe alter that. So because obviously the COVID
I don't
situation
want to confuse people.
Of course, you have to be careful. Maybe use pandemic, not COVID, because you can run into things. Thank you for putting the link in here.
I'm going to write a separate article and just say treating PTSD with nootropic supplements.
Beautiful.
I haven't gotten around. I've been meaning to do that for the last 2 years, and I haven't gotten around to doing it. But I'll get it done.
That was, so we dove deep into that one. We never got to the other items on this. So we're going to have to bring you back again on the podcast, because I don't want to start opening up a can of worms before it. But before we go, where can people get access to you, find this information, and track you down? Because I think, you're one of the OGs in nootropics. You've transformed your own life from it, and you're doing an incredible public service of helping people sort through this laundry list of nootropics.
Well, just Google me. Google David Tomen or Google Nootropics Expert or whatever your favorite search engine is, and it'll pop up right to the top. Or the YouTube channel. If you start typing in nootropics, that's Nootropics. Some people call it nootropics. I call it nootropics. Just start typing that word in there. Nootropics Expert will pop up at the top. Just click that, and there's, 105 videos, I think, or 110 videos. If you go to the website, nootropicsexpert.com, there's links throughout the website where you can get a free download of Secrets of the Optimized Brain. And Secrets of the Optimized Brain is I think it's 90, gosh, how many pages? 90, it's around 85 or 90 pages for free. Just give me your email address and you can download a copy of the book. And it's got I think 75 or 80 different supplements. It might have 82 supplements in it now. And I have the name of the supplement, what the supplement does for you, and recommended dosage in this little book.
What an incredible way for people to kind of start their journey, get the information that you've sorted out over all these years, and then get access to the videos. So start yourselves with the books, folks. Watch some of the videos. Check out the article from David. And more importantly, recognize that taking control of your brain in these times is critically important. And investing in your cognitive function is something that we all need to do. Like I said earlier, virtually all of the high performers that I know are using nootropics, myself included, as well as our team members. And David is providing an incredible resource of information to start accessing and cataloging and learn this field, because it's fascinating. It's really, really cool.
I'm excited to wake up that's the reason why I called my book Head First. Yeah. If you take care of your head first, everything else falls into place.
Words could not be any wiser and more important in these stressful times during the pandemic. There you have it, folks. It's another edition with Mr. David Tomen, the nootropics expert. He's back. Also, you can go back to our episode number 58 where he was on here before. But more importantly, take care of your brain. Jump in head first. Grab his books. Check out his videos. And more importantly, take control of your own brain, because essentially that's how you perceive the world. So optimizing it makes all the sense there is. That's another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. I'm YT Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.